This is the most important man in the world. His name, it doesn't matter. Race, nationality, religion, they're not important. What does he do for a living? That doesn't matter either. What makes him important is that he has the most precious possession in the world. For he is an American citizen, and he carries in his pocket a ticket to freedom, his right to vote. That ordinary-looking piece of paper is the symbol of his greatest privilege and his gravest responsibility. Because along with more than 90 million other citizens of this republic, men and women from all walks of life, Americans of every race, color, and creed, he holds in his hands the fate of the greatest nation on earth. Through his secret ballot, he and millions of others like him choose the men who will govern this nation, formulate its policy, and make its laws. What kind of guy is he, this most important man in the world? What does he think about his privilege and his responsibility? Well, as a matter of fact, he doesn't think about it much at all. He considers himself a pretty normal sort of person with a pretty normal life. The kind of guy who likes to think for himself, make up his own mind, make his own decisions. Yes, he's an individual, just like his father was. He doesn't like anybody telling him what to do or how to do it. And he can get pretty tough when anybody tries. He owns his own home and a car. So do most of his friends. He figures that's the way it should be in America. Nothing unusual about it. He goes to work every day. He's satisfied with his job. If he weren't, he'd do something about it. Talk it over with his boss or just leave it and find another. He feels that's his right. Nothing strange about that. He goes to church on Sunday and worships in whatever way he feels is best. This seems perfectly natural to him. It's always been this way in America. He sits in front of his television set and watches democracy at work. He watches the citizens of the Republic go about the job of choosing their leaders, with all the noise and color traditional to the national convention of our great political parties. He finds it exciting, or amusing, or sometimes even annoying, but he doesn't think it unusual. Nothing to get excited about. He takes pretty much for granted this business of choosing the men who will govern him, write his laws, protect his home, educate his kids. It seldom occurs to him that all over the world, enslaved millions would gladly give their lives for this precious freedom he accepts so lightly. Yes, this is the man with the priceless ballot, the most important man in the world. There are more than 100 million of us like him who share this freedom and the responsibility for preserving it. Most of us, if necessary, would fight to the death for it. But what do we do about it? Listen, in the national election of 1948, in one of the most critical periods in our history, only about 51% of the 94 million Americans eligible to vote cast their ballots. Almost half of the adult citizens of this nation were apparently not interested enough in their own political and economic future to vote. Contrast this dismal showing with the records of some of the democracies in the shadow of the Iron Curtain, where liberty has perhaps taken on frightening new significance. In Italy, in the vital 1946 elections, more than 89% of the adult population turned out to vote. Remember what happened? The communists were beaten. In the French elections in 1951, 78% of the eligible voters went to the polls. The Reds were defeated there, too. And in Great Britain, 83% of the people cast their ballots in the 1951 election. And yet, in this greatest and freest democracy in the world, almost half the citizens are not even interested enough to use their precious ballot. And in local elections, which concern things as vital to the family and the individual as local schools, property taxes, roads, or even garbage collection, only about 20% of the citizens bother to vote. In a recent labor union election, less than 300 workers elected unit officers to represent nearly 4,000 union members. The others just didn't bother to vote. Do you think the workers who didn't bother to vote have any real right to gripe about the way the union is run? Do you think the citizen who failed to cast his ballot has any right to complain about corruption or high taxes, inept foreign policy or wasteful spending, or any other phase of government he disagrees with? Of course he hasn't. He forfeited his right to complain when he forfeited his ticket to freedom. And almost half the citizens of the United States lost their voice in government in the 1948 national election. Nearly 80% of them in recent local elections.
I was pretty busy around election time. Well, I just didn't have a chance to get to the voting booth that day.
The way the newspapers read, I thought the election was all sewed up. I didn't see what difference my one vote would make.
For my dough, politics is dirty business. Politicians, a lot of crooks. I don't want any part of it.
Well, those are the reasons people give, or rather, excuses. There can be no reason for not voting. Too busy? Busy doing what? What could the most important man in the world possibly be doing more important than safeguarding his future, securing his liberty and that of his children, assuring his community and his nation of decent, honest, competent leadership? No, we can't accept that too busy excuse. And what of the citizen who thinks his or her one vote makes no difference? The facts tell quite a different story. Looking back at our own history, a single electoral vote made Rutherford B. Hayes president in 1876. A single vote in one county of Indiana in the 1840s elected a state legislator. The legislator's single vote sent a man to the United States Senate. The senator's single vote, as President pro tem, admitted Texas to the Union and set off the Mexican War. The Constitution itself was ratified by only 19 votes in Massachusetts, by 10 in Virginia, by 9 in New Hampshire, and by 2 in Rhode Island. And an even more recent example, a single vote in each of Ohio's precincts in 1948 would have given Ohio's 25 electoral votes to the other candidate. When you believe that your one vote is unimportant, you play right into the hands of those who would usurp the power of the people. And that brings us to the final excuse, one that's heard more and more often these days. Politics is dirty, and politicians are all crooks. Well, prepare yourself for a shock, friend. You're a politician. Whether you like it or not, you're a politician. You can't help it. That piece of paper in your pocket, or waiting for you at your election board, makes you a